Well, first, I just love your story so much because I do think, for different reasons, it's the story of most people in America. They don't, for a variety of reasons, they don't have people guiding and mentoring them. Or even if they do, people only know a small number of careers. So the first thing I want to say to you is we have 868 careers in the Future platform. That's pretty mind blowing. I've been working with this data and these careers for a year and a half now. I still get in there and I'm like, whoa, I didn't know about that one. I've seen it, but it hasn't landed for me. And so even the best intended humans don't know all that's out there and what might be a good fit. And so the first thing we try to do is help young people just begin to explore and get curious about things that they've never even heard of, and they don't have anyone in their life who does this. They've never seen it before. Your story about looking at your teacher and saying, I want to do that, that's such a normal, common story that we end up gravitating to the thing that is proximate to us because it's familiar, right? It doesn't mean it's the best fit though. And it turns out kids, they don't know what you do in a job. I mean, most people don't know what people do every day. And so that exploration, the other one that is really, really top of mind for young people is the financial implications. They care a lot. They don't have good access to information. And so we've got really engaging tools where they can see what their financial health would be, what a potential budget would look like on this career, what the advancement opportunity is. So if you start here, but how could you advance in the salary? Where you could be anywhere in the country. Those types of really engaging activities where in the process they're figuring out, who am I and what do I want and what do I care about? And then how can I match that to what the world has to offer me?
Hey everyone, and welcome to Vector, a podcast where we explore the ecosystem around math, science, and tech, and what these fields can do for education, teaching and learning, and preparing our young people for the world and their future. Today I have a very special guest with me. Her name is Diane Tavenner, and she is the co-founder and CEO of a platform called Futre, a research-aligned technology platform that helps young people discover who they want to be and how they'll contribute to the world. Now, before Futre, she was the CEO of Summit Public Schools, which is a leading network of public schools that operates 11 schools in California and Washington, as well as a free program that enables schools across the U.S. to implement Summit Learning, its nationally recognized, personalized approach to teaching and learning. Diane founded Summit's flagship school, Summit Preparatory Charter High School, in 2003, with the mission to prepare a diverse student population for success in college, career, and life, and to be thoughtful, contributing members of society. So welcome, Diane, and thank you so much for taking the time to be here today. I know you're so busy. And now I'd like to open the floor for you to tell us a little bit more about yourself and the work that you're doing.
Well, thank you, Lisa. It's really great to be here. I appreciate the work that you do here on this podcast. And so thanks for being in dialogue with me. I think what I would add is that probably the why, why do I do what I do? And I think it goes back to my experience as a young person in school. I grew up in a home that was, sort of physically and emotionally unsafe, and unstable in a lot of ways. And school was the place where I could figure out who I was and where I was going and sort of have a way forward. And I think that's true for a lot of young people. And so I became a teacher because I just wanted to make that option available to other young people who were like me. And then I got into it, and education is a massive system. It's one of the most important systems we have, in my view, in America. And it's a system that has a lot of strengths and a lot of challenges. And quite frankly, right now, in my view, is not meeting the need and the purpose and the mission of what we need out of education as a country and as individuals. And so the work that I did at Summit was trying to work literally on schools, and how we could redesign them to better serve young people. But in that process, what I figured out was like there was always this gnawing part of me, which is like, where are we actually sending the young people after they're in our high schools, and what's happening in that sort of broken pipeline into whether it be college or post secondary learning of some sort, and most importantly, into career and to a fulfilling life. And so at some point, after 20 years working at Summit, I couldn't resist the opportunity to really dive in and see if I could contribute there. And so Future was born. And it kind of marries what I learned to be a passion of mine, which was technology, and how can we use technology in unique, smart, purpose-driven ways to support the very human work of educating people. So that's where I am.
It's I share a lot of similarities with your background story as well. I think about going back to where I was as a young person, and I was my parents didn't go to college, so there wasn't a lot of I guess mentorship in how to navigate that process. And I think about being from a fairly rural area, um, and a very small high school. And I think about there wasn't a whole lot of guidance. I was supposed to have somebody else guiding me to my career choices, and there wasn't anybody at home guiding me, and there wasn't really anybody at school guiding me. And I remember probably around 10th grade sitting there thinking, like, I have to start making some decisions, and I have no idea what I wanted to be. And have you ever seen the TED Talk where the woman talks about being a multi potentialite?
Oh, I'm trying to think. I'm not sure that I have. Yeah.
Favorite all-time TED Talk, and the gist of it is I don't want to be one thing, I want to be everything.
Uh,
And where I always ask, like, what do you want to be when you grow up? Well, it was a hard question for me because, like, I want to be a rock star and a princess and an astronaut and a teacher and a doctor. And I want to be all of the things. And every day I wanted to be something else. I was a fashion
yes.
designer. I was an author. I was always as an only child. A lot of my play was exploring what I would be when I grew up.
Interesting.
Um, and I did decide one day, sitting in my 10th grade history class, watching my teacher, thinking, like, yeah, I'm gonna be that. I'm gonna be a history teacher. Like, this is it. Um, and that was how I made that decision. But I often think, like, wow, yeah, I looked at Future and I thought this would have been great to have this platform where
Yeah.
I could explore possibilities and like see how I could invent myself, and what options were available. So when
Yeah.
a kid goes in there, what do they see? What do they do?
Well, first, I just love your story so much because I do think, for different reasons, it's the story of most people in America that they don't, for a variety of reasons, they don't have people guiding and mentoring them, or even if they do, people only know a small number of careers. So the first thing I want to say to you is we have 868 careers in the Future platform. And that's pretty mind blowing. I've been working with this data and these careers for a year and a half now. And I still get in there and I'm like, whoa, I didn't know about that one. Like, I've seen it, but it hasn't landed for me. And so even the best intended humans don't know all that's out there and what might be a good fit. And so the first thing we try to do is help young people just begin to explore and get curious about things that they've never even heard of, and they don't have anyone in their life who does this. They've never seen it before. Your story about like looking at your teacher and saying, I want to do that. That's such a normal, common story that we end up gravitating to the thing that is proximate to us because it's familiar, right? It doesn't mean it's the best fit though. So we try to get them to just begin with from a place of curiosity. And I will start by saying this is one of the many places where Future, I think, differs from a lot of other options out there where we really are research aligned. So we don't give kids a test that's kind of a black box and then spit out 3 to 5 careers and say, you know what, this is what you should be. And most of us have stories of having experiences like that and feeling really frustrated and being like, what? You think I should be a mortician? Why? Like, why? What? That doesn't make any sense to me. And so again, aligned with the research, trying to open curiosity, what we do is it's very open and transparent. So we say, tell us what you like doing. Like there's these 41 things. Tell us areas you're interested in. And then we're going to show you careers that have a strong match with those things. And we're not going to tell you that they're for you. We're just going to show you where they match. And then we're going to say, I don't know, are you curious about this? Do you want to look into it? Turns out when you take that approach, that sort of developmentally aligned, science aligned approach, young people start with curiosity and they're like, oh, okay, yeah, like what is that? Okay. And then what the platform does is what technology can do well in a really engaging, interesting way. It helps them start to explore the career in ways that will matter. And so, again, from the science, and one of our advisors is Dr. David Yeager, who's this extraordinary learning scientist. He's got a new book out, 10 to 25, The Science of Motivating Young People. And he works closely with us on the platform. And he said one of the things that matters a ton for career and life happiness and success is that you like doing what you do every day. And you don't have to like all of it. And you and I can probably attest to this. Like there's stuff we have to do in our jobs every day that we don't like. But in sum total, a majority of what we're doing, we actually like. We find meaning, we like the task, where there's purpose. And so that's, for example, one of the activities is we have the top 10 things you'll be doing in all of these 868 careers. And we have an engaging way for you to think about that and like, do I really like these? Do I not? Do I even know what they are? And do they add up to the kind of total that would make me feel like this is fulfilling work? Or is that total like, most of what I'd be doing all day, I don't want to actually do? And it turns out kids, they don't know what you do in a job. I mean, most people don't know what people do every day. And so that exploration, the other one that is really, really top of mind for young people is the financial implications. They care a lot. They don't have good access to information. And so we've got really engaging tools where they can see like what their financial health would be, what a potential budget would look like on this career, what the advancement opportunity is. So if you start here, but how could you advance in the salary? Where you could be anywhere in the country, and the type. So those types of really engaging activities where in the process they're figuring out, who am I and what do I want and what do I care about? And then how can I match that to what the world has to offer me? So that's the beginning part of the experience. And then at the risk of talking too long, I'll just say, the next phase is when you find some careers that you're interested in that feel engaging to you. Now, how do you get into that career? What's required? And, as an education system, and I have been a part of this, we've really driven young people to four-year college. And we've kind of said to them, that's the ticket. That's the only thing you should be focused on. Like, let's drive everyone there. And that's actually not true for all of these careers. Many of these careers have different pathways to get into them. It doesn't require a 4-year degree. Many of them require 2-year degrees or certifications or licenses that can even be earned in a shorter period of time. Or there's a way that you can sort of stack and do one career and then the next. And that information, it's complex, it's complicated. Counselors don't know it, especially for all these careers. And so this is what technology does well. It can lay all that out. It can show you the options. It can be really clear. It can be very customized and dynamic. And so we show young people the learning pathway that they'll need to take to get into that career. what it will cost, how long it will take, where eventually, like where you could go to get that learning, and can you work along the way? Are there experience requirements? So kind of making that plan of that pathway and customizing it. And then finally, and I think this is the most important piece, is okay, now that I've got this plan, I'm a 10th grader in history. Let's say you had the tool and you had the plan. Well, what do I do today that will help me get to that while I'm a 10th grader in high school? And this is where we're partnering with schools and community organizations to make visible and accessible to young people all the offerings that they have, because there's all these people in communities who are offering internships and job shadowing experiences and career fairs and all these, but how are kids learning about them? How are they connecting that opportunity to the career they're actually interested in? And so, again, this is what technology can do really well. It can do it fairly. So, I don't have to be listening to the overhead speaker in the morning class about them announcing some opportunity. And if I miss that, I've missed it totally. It's still mind-boggling to me that that's kind of how high schools are still conveying this really critical information. And
Who's
so we
listening,
want to
right?
bring them a new tool. Yeah.
Who's listening?
Yeah. So, I mean, we joke, but you really can go back into high schools and feel like you're right at home, like the high school you went to. So much has not changed. So, anyway,
Right.
that's the high level kind of arc of the experience that Future is seeking to offer.
There's so much of what you were saying about like exploring interests, and I think I'm kind of giggling a little bit internally because I would not be the best person to give real great advice about how to find your way. First of all, I'm like super happy where I am right now, but it's not where I intended to be when I started making the plan. And if somebody asked me how I got here, I'd have to say it's a mixture of, I did the planning, but how I got to here was a mixture of like following joy, happy accidents, and unfortunate events.
Yes.
And I made the plans. I over planned.
Yeah.
I was a little afraid that my plan wouldn't work. So I had a plan A, B, and C, and I did them all simultaneously. Just because I have lots of degrees, and I was over prepared. I had an escape hatch just in case teaching didn't work.
Yeah.
And I was coming up to be a social studies teacher in a time where all of the social studies teachers were men and they were football coaches.
Ah,
So everyone kept telling me that I probably wouldn't get a job as a high school social studies teacher. That was
yes.
not true, but I believed them for a minute, and I thought, all right, what's plan B going to be?
Yes.
So I made sure I had some other thing to fall back on.
Mhm.
Uh, I went an entirely different direction with my graduate work, and I really didn't know how that was going to all fit in, but it did. And as I started moving closer and closer to equity work and nonprofit work, and I started moving that direction, I look back now and all of the dots aligned, but I didn't know at the time how they were going to.
Right.
And
Right.
I was following the joy, kind of like the universe was putting me in the places I needed to be, and I was just following the path.
Yes.
I didn't know where it was going, but I was
Yeah.
following it.
Well,
And so a lot of that is really, I think, is finding those things that really light you up and going. And
totally.
being it as a kid, like you're saying, we don't know as young people what that is. And
Hmm.
having something, that is there at our fingertips in a way, like using the tech that in a way that kids are engaging,
Right.
that make it interesting for them to be able to see the things that aren't right in front of them and to be able
Right.
to discover those careers that they don't know exist.
I,
Makes it
I
so much easier.
I love your story for so many reasons. Again, because I think it's such the human experience, and I we are building so much of what we're doing is trying to meet the human experience where it is versus trying to sort of fight against it. And so, a couple of examples of that is at Future. Our model, if you will, is that when a young person signs into Future, they have our product for 10 years. So this is not a like monthly license of software. This is like a 10-year commitment to that young person for the very reason you're saying is like you're going to change, and things are going to happen, and you need that resource. We want to be a trustworthy, steady resource for you that stays with you through all those twists and turns and changes of heart, and hopefully not as many, challenging situations or tragic experiences, but they're real. And we want to be there so that you have that support when things do shift and change. And so you can try things on in a safe environment in the platform. Well, what if I did this? Well, what if I did that? Like, how would that look and work and whatnot? And so that 10-year commitment is a huge part of who we are. And coming out of schools and knowing that kids say, like, I don't even know why I bother. My school gives me a platform, and then 2 months later, we're not using it, or we use one thing one year and not the next, or I have that in that classroom, but then it goes away. And so that trustworthiness and that steadiness is a big part of what we're doing. And then the second thing is, again, aligned to the science of development and what we know about purpose and pursuing a purposeful life is, this is not a one-time event. And unfortunately, that's kind of how our society treats it. And schools will be like, okay, this Tuesday for this 45-minute class, we're all going to sit down and figure out what our career is going to be and make a list. And then we're going to, the next week, do the next step. And that's just not how it works for humans. And so that becomes an activity that doesn't feel real or authentic or honest to who I am. So then the young person feels like, well, the real me does it on my own out here, and or I feel a little bit like a failure, because if by the end of that period I don't have a genuine list, then there's something wrong with me, or I'm just making up a list to check the assignment, but it's not real. And so the science of future is very much this journey that we know is going to circle back on itself and move forward and then change direction, and normalizing that and supporting the natural human evolution is something that we're seeking to do because it's developmentally appropriate. Yeah. So
Wow.
love your story.
Great. So great. So this will come, it's not something that you can sign on to as an individual. It comes through a school and a platform.
Currently, we are working with schools. We're getting a ton of requests from individual families, and so we're thinking hard about that. We don't feel like we're ready to do that yet, but I hope at some point. But right now, yes, we're partnering with schools who really feel like this is what they've been missing and what their young people need and want, and we are. I think this goes to just the technology part of it, because in my view, like, what you do as a company or an organization is deeply important, obviously. Why you do it, deeply important, but like how you function as a company is just as important in my mind, and especially with young people who really have lost faith in institutions. They don't trust institutions anymore. And so we spend a lot of time talking to them about, like, what's the type of institution or company that you would trust with your future? Like, who do you want us to be and need us to be? And so one of those things is we build in partnership. And so we literally are in schools and with school partners every couple of weeks. We're showing them our ideas. We're showing them our mocks. We're showing them our wireframes. We're showing them our first builds. We're getting their feedback all along the way. And we've done that from the very, very beginning. And so this product feels like it literally is, a collaboration with young people and counselors and teachers and people in schools of what is needed. And so, that's how we're building and what it looks like and feels like. And so by the time we get to the final thing, it feels like we have complete consensus on it. We've been working with everyone.
It seems like it will kind of blow my mind a little bit. I was just having a conversation yesterday about the possibilities of those who are tech orgs, to bring in technology platforms and AI platforms and those that to solve problems in schools. But so often, schools, educators, like the whole the whole institution of school, we have problems. And if you think way back to the beginning of ed tech, we have a tech tool, and instead of thinking really intentionally about what problem that tool solves, we just bring in the tool and throw it at all the problems and see, and then it's just kind of chaos. And so I said, well, what if we take a really informed position on these things and figure out what problem am I trying to solve, and
Exactly.
what tech tool, or what tech solution will solve the problem,
Right.
will best solve this problem, and pair those things. So here, what you have is a very thoughtful tech platform that is actually trying to co-create with schools
Yeah.
to solve a very specific problem. It's research based in the learning research, in learning science, and it's almost like I've gotten on this call with you today, and we're talking about the exact thing I was talking about yesterday, and we did not talk about that before this. So it's kind of blowing my mind a little bit. It,
Oh, well,
um, it seems like the exact place where the intersection that schools and technology, that's where we need to go moving forward, is to
yeah.
have that co-creation space that is very thoughtful and informed, um, and co-created to solve the
Yeah.
real problems in schools.
I think that's right, and I will say that I think my orientation in that direction, and I'm so grateful that I found a partner who's this extraordinary like product person and has never worked in education before, but her daughters went to summit schools, and she like had this intuition and this passion for this. I'm so lucky that I have her as my partner because she believes deeply in this approach. But I really think this approach comes from, being a school person and
Mhm.
identifying problems we had, knowing that technology could solve them, being, living in Silicon Valley. And so being surrounded by that. And then, like just sort of intuitively, kind of like you, intuitively like finding, well, who would partner with me on the technology side and how could we actually build this together? And so, but you talked about Summit Learning, and that's how Summit Learning was built because I was building from the school side. And so when I had the opportunity to sort of flip over to the other side, it was very clear to me that that's how I wanted to build. And so every conversation begins with what problems do you have and what problems are we trying to solve, and like what does the science tell us about solving those problems, and what do we know from the evidence, and how do we follow that, and then how do we listen very, very closely to young people and what they're doing. And that's a very, like you said, unusual approach to building technology. And I will say, I think, I'm kind of old at this point and I have some credibility based on what I've done, but it's not a deeply respected, founders who aren't technical of company, they're not super respected. Like there's technically a debate about that, but most people are like, nah, if you don't have a technical founder, like you're kind of, especially when we start talking about AI. And
Right.
so, you know, obviously, I think there are different ways that can be equally or more effective, but it is interesting to be in a space where that's not definitely not the norm and not always appreciated.
Right. But as evidenced by what you're doing, there's when you bring people who have different strengths to the table, your tech strength person is going to, your technologist is going to miss a lot of these really important details
Right.
that somebody else doesn't. And that's what's going to make the product successful,
Yeah.
when all of the expertise in the room is honored and is is respected.
Yeah.
Your technologists might know their AI or know their tech platform, but they aren't going to know our schools. And
It's
that's where
true.
we need to elevate the educators and the education leaders as the experts in those places, because they know our schools, they know our kids, and they know the problems.
Yes. Yeah.
Um, our tech people are just guessing at what the
Yeah.
problems are,
Yeah.
and maybe that's why it gets a little bit of chaotic when we're trying to use tech tools to solve problems, because they're guessing, and maybe they're kind of on the right track, but sometimes they don't have all the information.
Right. Right. It's true. It's true. The other thing that we're doing along these lines is, we are building a platform for young people who are emerging from high school into post secondary learning, into pathways, into their careers. And we just felt like to be credible, we have to have those people in our company. We have to have young people in our company. We have to be understanding what that experience is. We have to be on the employer side of that and figuring it out what it is to employ people as their first jobs. And so we are deeply committed to that. Our engineering team are young, like fresh out of college graduates who we then, and which is totally possible, they're amazing, and we committed to making sure that they have a coach who is like mission aligned, value aligned, and is coaching them so that they aren't missing sort of that mentorship in a small startup where you don't have a lot of people. They have a technical lead who's also like coaching them. And so again, like trying to really live our values of how do we welcome and invite young people into their first careers and set them up for success, and what is the role that the company can play in doing that. We're also a virtual company, which has lots of benefits, but it also has this drawback of not being in person and learning kind of those professional skills and things. And so we make very conscious efforts to be together in person and spend time on that. We have a whole group of college interns who are working with us, who are doing a lot of our research and whatnot. And they also review the product every single week and give feedback on it and whatnot. And so, again, I'm very focused on making sure that like how we do our work is totally aligned with the values of the work we're trying to do, and the product we're trying to build.
Wonderful. Now, what kind of feedback are you getting from the kids that have used Future, or the
Yeah.
teachers who are supporting the kids using Future?
Yeah. Well, it's been evolving over time. And as we incorporate their feedback, it gets better and better. I mean, where we are today is the feedback we get is people get on and they're like, wow, I love this. It's really clean. It's really easy to navigate. It's really intuitive. It has great information. Some say it's fun. And here's the best piece of feedback we get. I love it when we get this, which is, thinking about my future usually makes me feel anxious, or it usually makes me feel worried, or it makes me feel like I don't even want to think about it because I don't know what's going to happen. And future makes it not feel so bad. Like I feel okay when I'm using future. Like I can do this. I don't feel stressed out. And that when we started getting that feedback, we knew we were on the right track, because that's what we were going for. Because we hear across the board from young people, it is stressful to think about post high school and being an adult and what I'm going to do and what's going to happen and the world that I'm living in. That is stressing me out. And a tool that makes that feel possible and hopeful, and they really like that it feels very honest. They're like, tell it to us straight, be real with us. We don't want, we need to know the truth. And so that's our guide every day. Like, do you feel like this is truthful and honest to you? And right, and the feedback is yes.
Especially that salary information, right? Sometimes we're a little bit idealist when we're looking at careers and looking at those things that we might love to do, and don't really understand the money that we'll make until we have already invested hundreds of thousands of dollars
Yes.
into that education, and then
Yeah.
realize that we're going to make just a little bit of money for the
Yeah.
rest of our lives.
No, it's so important. And I've been in so many classrooms now, and like some of the experiences I have is like, a young person going through and working through, and then they get to that and they're like, oh, well, I can't live on that. Like, okay. And they're like, I'm either going to have to get a different career. I'm going to have to get a side hustle, but like that type of like realness and thinking. Or then I've had other people, it's interesting. This one young woman really wanted to be an air traffic controller. Like and we were going through the financially, it was good. We got to the daily tasks, and then one of the things that happens in the platform is, we ask you to think about what you want your life outside of work to look like. And we actually write you a story, a personal story of what your life will be. And she had gone through the tasks, she'd gone through the financials, and she reads this story and she turns to me and she's like, I don't want to live that life. And it was this sad moment, but it was also like, thank goodness she didn't go all the way through to get into that. And somehow reading the story and putting herself in it, she was like, oh no, that is not the life that I want to live. But the good news is now she has all these other paths to explore, and she hasn't invested in this one. And then, has that trade-off of, well, I've spent so much time and money to get here. Do I stay miserable or do I switch? And we're hoping to deal with so much of that earlier on.
That alone, I think is so valuable. That alone, to be able to imagine yourself, and I don't think that when we were growing up, there wasn't enough data for us to be able to imagine ourselves, because again, we idealize it. We think about, oh, this great life and everything is going to be wonderful, but nobody really writes that story for us. If I could have read those stories, maybe I would have thought differently about a lot of the choices
Yeah.
I made, and many people. To really be able to
Yeah.
imagine yourself in that
Yeah.
space and
Yeah.
to lay it out, that alone is phenomenal to be able
Yeah. And there's nothing that will replace like actual in-person experiences. So when young people are able to do internships in companies, when they're able to go and do a job shadow, when they're able to even do informational interviews, those are extraordinary experiences. And not every young people can do that on all the careers they want to explore. So one of the things Future's trying to do is like help you do some of that for, as many things as possible so you can really narrow. So, you might only get one job shadow or one internship. Well, let's make that one count because you've kind of like ruled out the other ones in these other ways. And you're really like, no, I think this one's the fit. So let me go test it in person. And so we're hoping that those opportunities that are offered really get like maximized and used really well and efficiently because young people have had the chance to do all this other exploration before they get there.
I told you that I had all of my plan A, B, and C. So I insisted that I was going to see both of my majors through. So I did have the opportunity to do, and I did my student teaching, and then in the next semester I did the internship I did a public policy major too.
Interesting.
And I did an internship in the state government, in the legislative branch. And I learned there were parts of it that were great, but I learned very quickly that I am not cut out to be in the legislature, in the staff, because I was so bored. I was bored. I was bored. It's not, you think it's going to be exciting because you see only the exciting, like, political battles and things, and you think it's going to be this exciting debating and like all of these things. I was rotting in a cubicle most of the time. And I'm like, I'm bored. I'm bored. I was spinning in a chair. One day that there's a terrible snowstorm outside. I live an hour away from the Capitol. There was a snowstorm. They forgot to tell me to go home. I was in the cubicle. They forgot I was even there. There was an early dismissal. They forgot to tell me to go home for like maybe like an hour or two after the dismissal.
Oh no.
I was so bored all the time. I was just researching and doing things, but I thought if I choose this as a career instead of going into education, I just felt myself getting like, I would tell people, I'm just going to sit here and eat and get large and grow over the sides of the chair. It,
Yeah, well, and that's down to those tasks. And like, honestly, we know that about those jobs. When we look at the top 10 tasks, and if you had had the ability to be like, oh, that's what the job is, it's not I can't tell you how many young people we talk to who say, oh, I'm going to be a lawyer. And then we ask, oh, great. Like, why? What do and it's because they've seen these courtroom dramas on TV or in movies, and they think that's what the job is. And they have no idea that almost very few lawyers ever do what's on TV, literally ever. And what their day to day is when they are really understanding the task, they're like, oh no, I don't want to do that, you know?
That was actually my first career choice. But I wanted to be a TV lawyer, and my brain knew enough to know that that was not going to be it, and I was going to be doing like tax law in a desk somewhere, and that was it. I'm
You're
like,
like
no,
redlining contracts and like, yeah.
that's not what I want to do. So we're not doing that. I said, so unless I can be like district attorney in a city and do that stuff, like, no. Uh,
Right.
but yeah, you're right. Like we see these things that are made to be exciting in TV and movies, and that's what we want to do. But that's not always
No,
what the job looks like.
no.
And don't get me wrong, there were days that something exciting would happen, and there'd be a caucus, and I'd have to put on my little name badge and run through the Capitol and go to the House floor. And those were exciting days that it would last about 15 minutes, and then I'd go back to my cubicle. But I knew quickly that I can't do that. I need to have more interaction with humans, and and I needed to do something that felt more possible.
Yes.
And so it was great that I had that opportunity, because
Yeah.
otherwise I might have thought that was for me. So
Yeah.
it's so great that that kids have this available to them. So your work, I can't wait to see where it goes. Now, how many years have you been doing it?
We are early on, so we're just about a year into building the product, and so yeah, it feels short and long at the same time. It's interesting, people who we work with and it kindly are like, wow, you guys have made so much progress. And it is true. Our team did like a retro of the last year. And when we look back where we were a year ago, we're like, oh, wow, we have come a long way, turns out. And we have such a big vision for where we're going. We still think we have, a long way to go. But our goal is that by the end of this school year, so sort of June 2025, that we have like the complete arc of the experience, the baseline experience that I described to you. And we know we are always going to be iterating and improving and adding and whatnot. We've got a giant list to work on, but at least, the full complete experience by the end of the school year, so that next school year, young people can really use the full experience. So
Right. Do you have any AI involved in the platform?
we do, and we have it's sort of an interesting, maybe a different perspective on AI that I think a lot of people do, which is first two big main things. One, we see AI as a super valuable tool, and we are always thoughtful about what is it we're trying to do, what are we trying to create, what are we trying to do, what's the experience, and can AI help us to do that? Is it a useful tool in doing that? And is it the best tool in doing that? And how do we do that? So that's our approach to AI. We are not a company that's like, we're going to build an AI product. We don't know what it is or what problem we're solving, but we're going to build. And I see a lot of companies that are like that right now. So we're kind of the opposite. Like, how is it a really useful tool? It turns out it is a very useful tool. We are using it in a number of places. A good example, I told you about how we write personalized stories. Clearly, we're using AI there. We're helping people customize their pathways. Yes, we're using AI there. But that goes to sort of our second kind of perspective, which is this is not like an AI chatbot that is your counselor. Um,
Right.
we are really, there's no chats or bots or anything like that. It's more like our approach is, how do we build technology that's intuitive, that's easy to navigate, that helps me discover myself and what the world has. Not because someone's like telling me what to do or I'm chatting into a box, but because it naturally is like a really good experience. And, I'm not sure I love this comparison, but like the very best video games, if you think about that, just they don't have to give you directions, like you're going through this journey or path. And it's fun and it's interesting and exciting and you're making progress and you're doing all of those things, but you're not having a conversation with a chatbot on the side. And so that's the approach that we take to it, and how we use it.
That's great. That's
I will
great.
say it's a very small number, but there are a small number of young people who are really, really, really turned off by AI right now. And if they detect any sort of AI in a product, that they kind of wholesale reject it. And we're trying to be in dialogue with them and understand their perspective and be respectful of it. But there are a small number that do not like it.
Yeah, I mean, there's a balance between, AI as something that is a little bit dangerous and but if used correctly, it's such a useful tool. And I'm just my mind keeps going back to that story and thinking about how that helps you get a really I mean, sure, it might not be exactly accurate, but it helps you get a really good look at what life might be like in that career. And I'm just overwhelmed with like, wow, how useful that is to a kid trying to imagine what their life could be. Now, I'm thinking you're very new and just have maybe 1 year of kids who have been exploring this product. And do you have a plan for how you are going to assess the effectiveness of the platform? Is it going to be like the success of kids in their careers? Is it what is your plan for like assessing yourselves?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Fun.
Well, this is another place where we're in close partnership with schools. And, one of the things we do early on before we even start working together is say, like, what does success look like for you? And so there are a few different goals that schools have that they share pretty universally, when you start looking at themes and trends. And one is every school we talk to says we want every single young person who graduates from our school, and oh, by the way, we want them all to graduate, to have a meaningful path that they're going to be on that is directed towards a life they want to live. That's a good life for them. And so that seems like our number one goal. That if you use our future and our platform, and you have some support in your school community, that every young person, not just the ones who are going to a 4-year college, but every young person can have a clearly identified, feasible, pathway that they're going to move on, that they understand how it leads to the career they want and the life that they want. So that's like number one marker of success. Honestly, we're getting a lot of requests from college students who need to do the same thing. So I imagine at some point we'll probably serve them and it would be a similar outcome. Like, now I've graduated from college. Do I have a clear path to a career that makes sense for me, that's leading to the life that I want to live? So that's a big one. The second category is going to be, and again, we know from the research, if young people have purpose, they understand what they're doing and why, they're much more likely to be engaged in the school work that they're doing right now, whatever they're doing right now. And so I think we'll work with our partners on how are they measuring engagement in school and in, what's happening while they're there. We all know that schools are struggling with attendance and chronic absenteeism and engagement and all of that. And so they're really looking for how the science tells us that if they're doing this work around purpose and they're motivated and they know where they're going, that they should be more engaged. And so I do think that that's a measure of, our efficacy and success. And as I say those things out loud, most people will be like, you're crazy. Like, we can't measure these things, that's too. And and yes, sort of technically true. And until we start really trying and measuring what we actually value, we're not going to make progress on those things. And so we're gonna take that on and work on that. The last thing I would say, and this is much more pragmatic, is schools generally have no idea what happens to their students after they graduate. And as a result, they're kind of blind to real data about, like, what could I be doing to improve my program based on the outcomes that I got, 2 years down the road, 4 years down the road, 6 years down the road. And we do believe that young people will want to keep Future, will want to stay with it. They will have insights into what their paths were and what they did, and that information will be very, very valuable for schools. And so that's another place where I think we'll be looking to add value and hopefully be able to, if we can provide schools really good insights and data on what went well and what didn't, how do they incorporate that into what they're offering, and how do they potentially redesign their schools accordingly?
Mm.
So
That's an excellent point. Schools do have no contact. Like there's no way to keep track outside of like an alumni association or something of that effect. They do lose touch with all their graduates and have no idea what's become of them. I think about my own connection to my schools. I'm still connected with like a handful of teachers, and that's certain people by choice, and
right.
that's it. So
Yeah.
nobody has kept tabs on what I've become and
No.
where I've gone.
Hmm.
So that's like critical data to measure the success of the school. So
Hmm.
really.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
Diane, is there anything I haven't asked you that you want us to know about Future?
No, I actually think this has been such a good, fun conversation. And I feel like we really were able to get deep into what we do and why we do it. And so I so much appreciate that. Yeah.
I'm so glad you were able to be here to talk with me today. I'm really excited to see how Future grows and what you're able to do with it. I think it's wow, I wish I would have had it. I really do. I wish I could get on there and play to see like what I'm supposed to be, because like I said, I keep reinventing myself, so it's never too late. But
Never too late.
I do. I think it's such a great resource for our kids today to really get to that place for a meaningful career. And I would have loved to have access to that myself. I will make sure that I shout it out to everybody that is interested. And I wish you lots of luck.
Thank you.
And come back and talk to us again in the future and let us know how things go.
I will definitely. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Thanks again. And for all of you out there, if you enjoyed this conversation, please do like, subscribe, and share with all of your friends in your network, and join us for the next Vector.